Hi everybody. Today's video is going to look at how I transport my Eldar army. I've had people asking me about it in recent months, had some people commenting on videos, how do I transport all those weirdly shaped Eldar tanks? How do I transport, all those troops? Because I do have a lot of Eldar, and I'm going to show you exactly how I do that. So really quickly, what we have here is a GW large case, the large format case. You've seen these before. They're relatively cheap compared to a lot of the other case options, the fitted cases that you see these days. Relatively cheap, and there are ways to make them very efficient in terms of space. I'm going to show you how to do that. I've got my big ugly monster here, not big green monster, big black monster over here of a case. I've got literally, it's so bursting at the seams that I had to install an extra strap just in case sometimes these things flick off randomly. That's how packed it is. But let's go right inside. I'm going to crack it open and show you what I do inside. Okay, so the first thing to notice is I actually have some of my flight stands packed in over here. I'm so overflowing with flight stands because, as you know, I do have a Sam Han army. That's one of my main themes of the army, that I literally have to pack some of these in here just to make space. But they slip in pretty nicely. You just kind of flip it in there between the two of these sets, and there they go. Let's pull all these things out real quick here. And we're going to get right into the nitty-gritty of the case. So let's flip over one side of the case. On the top, I have the lighter types of stuff. So I have all my jet bikes right here, basically. So I've got 18 of the regular jet bikes, 6 of which are have shuriken cannons. The rest of the regular guys here, and interspersed in between, I have all my 10 warlocks, my 2 Farseers. I even have my Autocron jet bike somewhere. So this should give you an idea of what can fit inside these slots, because each one of these jet bikes fits pretty nicely. I'd say he's like maybe a sliver of an inch above this thing, so it's really not a big deal to put jet bikes inside these kinds of things. Let me hold on to this for a second and get going further. When we go down inside deeper, what do we have here? We have my Dire Avengers and my Guardians. And what you'll notice is I've simply, rather than putting a single guy per slot, which is what you always see people do. This is what you see very often. You see one guy in a slot. Well, these are these are very skinny models. And the beauty about the GW linings is they're quite tall. Check that out. I mean, these guys are they're barely sticking out of these things. These Dire Avengers have higher hair, but there's enough space inside these cases that there's enough give that it's okay if you're not perfectly flush against these things. It's okay to have half an inch or an inch here. There's space built into them to make that possible. And you save so much space by double stacking the plastic guys. And actually I'm going to show you that I do that even with my metal guys, but that takes a little bit more effort so that they don't get scratched up. But with plastic guys, you almost never get scratched up. Once you've painted them up, I mean, maybe you've sealed them even, I never have problems very much with it. Look how much space I save. I've got 44 Guardians, 20 of these guys, packed in, including 4 of their platforms. Like these plastic platforms, they just kind of cram up against each other. And so I've managed to fit 2 into one slot. These metal ones over here, that's actually an old school metal type one. It's a little bit heavier. I kind of, and it's got the weapons attached, so I put them in there. Let's go even a little bit deeper, and you're going to see me doing the same double stacking, but with metal models. Okay, we're getting a little bit darker here. I'm going to bring a light over so you can see. But literally, I've double stacked my metal models. But notice what I've done. I've crammed a bunch of foam in between them. So in between each model, I've crammed foam. The foam just comes from when you open up. Well, actually, this is gone now because I guess GW sells their the resin stuff. But back in the old days, when you had metal models, they would come with extra foam padding inside, so that the metal wouldn't beat itself up. I'm sure you have all kinds of foam laying around from different places. Even my guys with wings over here, Swooping Hawks, crammed 2 to a guy. Now that's not the best example because a lot of those wings do end up breaking, and I end up having to fix them. But that's not because they're crammed in. That's because actually I'm really lazy. When I pull them out, I yank them right out, and that sometimes tears the wings and the bases off. Because I'm just careless. But Dark Reapers inside there. I've got my 10 Dark Reapers. You don't see me using those too often. Maybe one day. In here, in the side, I've crammed like my bag o' guns. You know how I magnetize all my weapons? I've got spare weapons, spare vehicle weapons, spare chunks of, of foam lying around. So be it. Let's move on to the other side where you can start seeing some vehicles. Put that back. Back it goes, cover it up. And on we go. Let's flip this top off. What do I have here? I have my skinnier and lighter vehicles. I have my 4 Vipers. Literally, I've cut out chunks of the foam. So this used to be 3 separate slots, 1, 2, 3. I've just made it into a single slot for a Viper. I've thrown some weapons in there with them just because I use them so often. I don't want to always be digging for weapons. Got 2 of my Wraith Lords over here. Got my Avatar in here. I've added extra foam though, just because he's pretty heavy and I don't want his swords to snap off. So I've kind of strategically placed foam around him. I got my Warwalkers. Again, this is cut out. This used to be many more slots. I've just cut them out to fit them for those walkers. And this was very, very fast, Like, I know that a lot of people like the battle foam cases and the pluck foam cases. And I actually do have one of those cases. I use it for my Grey Knight army. But it's a real pain in the ass, I gotta say, to pluck all that foam out. It takes a long time to pluck foam, and it's really annoying. And I find like it's very inefficient. I just find it's very inefficient. I seem to have to waste a lot of space. Where somehow this just works for me. Plucking out a bunch of the it's so easy because the bottom is actually bouncy. So literally, it's just like cut, and you move to the next one. Cut, you go. So that's the way the top section looks here. Moving down, we finally see the first vehicle over here. This is one of my overflow vehicles. That is, I believe, one of my Falcon bodies there. I also have the Night Spinner turret because I actually just bought the turret on its own online, just because I wanted to throw it on. Because as you know, I magnetize all my turrets, so that just clips right on. There it goes. So as you can see, I've cut out sections for a vehicle. I've just sort of measured it out and torn out a bunch of stuff. Now this area used to be very different. The reason, why is this all loose? Because this used to be, I think I used this case for a different army, totally different system. So, ideally this wouldn't have been plucked out, but I did pluck it, so I've kind of created by hand, a little extra zone for the turret to go, body, top of the Night Spinner. Over here I have my 2 Fire Prism turrets. They're metal, so I've given them their own separate little areas that I've created. And again, I've crammed metal models in, two to a spot, see? 2 guys in one spot, 2 guys, 1 spot. But again, I've crammed tons of foam in between them to make sure they're not chipping each other, to make sure they're not smashing into each other. And more importantly, it keeps them in place. When there's so much foam, these guys barely move. I've also got 2 to a man. I've got my Store Guardians. Here I've got Warlocks, 2 to a spot. Again, it's a much more efficient way. Cram 2 guys in there. Just make sure you've got the foam in between because they're metal models. I've even got 2 guys lying down, head to feet, and I've put more foam in between them. Farseer is a little bit taller, a little bit bulkier, hard to put them 2 to a spot, so I've got them in their own separate spot. Eldar has his own separate spot as well. Check that out. Now let's move on to the full vehicle section. Okay, now you see the secret to packing lots of Eldar vehicles. Now the first thing I've done, let's move one of these guys away. First thing I've done is I've just cut a whole section out of the, these types of squares. Again, I've just cut an entire section that I measured out, and it was pretty easy. I forget how many exact bits it was, but it worked out pretty well to cut it out. And I've left some space there. And the interesting thing is these vehicles are so thin, like the body on their own is so thin that if you stack them, let me see if I can show you. If you use the space, you see how this is, the area here is a little bit fatter, but this part is so thin, so you can actually stack them like this. When you stack them like this, check out what happens. Still very, very thin. Now, of course, you can't just stack them straight up like that, because they're going to scratch each other, get chipped, all that kind of stuff. So what I've done is I've simply put, these guys have attached to each other. What I've done is I've simply put some thin foam from other packages that I've bought with models in them, and I use that to simply cushion them. And it creates a beautiful little cushion. And believe it or not, because this case is big enough to allow that, it has enough give, enough space to do that, this works out perfectly for me. Over here, what do I have? I have my 2 wave serpents, right? 1 wave serpent on top of another wave serpent. Let's check out what this guy's thing looks like. I've got one thing covering him, another one covering him like this. You know, and I just get this in there. And we got these vehicles nicely, gently packed away. You know, I've got a turret kind of on the side here. I'm not too worried about this contacting because this is actually a magnet, so it's kind of bouncing around. So it's going to bounce around before anything happens to it. Pretty simple stuff. And that's the bulk of my army. Now, I do have one other case that I'm going to show you right now, because as you can see, every single millimeter of this entire case is packed. I'm going to show you my other overflow case. Okay, here we have my overflow Eldar case. This is one of the small GW cases. It's half the size of the big one that you saw previously. And let's get right into it. This is much less well organized than my other one. First of all, what you'll notice is each of these guys is individual. Why is that? Because this is crappy privateer or some kind of wannabe foam company foam. So the problem with it, even though it's roughly the same thickness as GW, although not quite, GW is up to about here maybe, the actual depth of these is very, very weak. I guess they really want this bottom area to be like super thick. The problem with that is you can't stand guys in it, really. I mean, look at this guy's. That's what he looks like standing in this thing. I mean, that's no good. The one you saw previously, the GW one, goes up to about here, so it's just his head and the tips of his weapons. It's no good. So, you know, I ran out of actual foam, so I had to just use this. I mean, if I could, if I need to eventually in the future, this will be thrown out, and this will be an actual GW foam. But in the meantime, this is what I look like. These are my striking scorpions. You haven't seen them on the table in a while. I mean, I have some battle reports from last year with them, but I haven't used them too much recently. I've got Corandris over there, of course, as well, as you've seen from my painting video. Or rather, not the painting video, but the showcasing video. Oops, this guy fell out. Here I have an empty GW case with a little bit of stuff cut out. I think I used this for a different game system. Now it's there. It's ready to be filled with all kinds of new Eldar should a new codex come out. And in the bottom I have my leftovers. I have my Autarch over here. I have Iriel. I have my custom built Azorman. You've seen him in many battle reports a few months back when 5th edition was still big. And I've got my Forge World Wraith Serpent with all the Forge World turrets, as you've seen in many battle reports. Now, if I were to get another vehicle, I would probably do the same thing I do with those other vehicles that I have. I would actually push him back, put some foam on, and then stick the other vehicle on top of him there. So that buys us some space here. I have a ton of space here. This is basically just unused space. So I could, for instance, kick this guy out, tear out a few more bits, and put more vehicles. Probably 2 more vehicles over here. So, you know, I'm ready to add stuff, and I do have the space. But just another example of creative ways to make use of space. Oops, with your storage. All right, guys. Well, I hope you like that. I hope that was informative for those Eldar players out there. You think, how do you store your stuff? The double stacking of guys in regular GW foam. I hope that was actually useful to other players, not just Eldar players. I really think it's a very efficient way to stack a lot of infantry. And just make sure that if they're very fragile, you put some foam in between them. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. I hope that was informative, and see you on the tabletop.